Welcome, and thank you for joining us on another episode of today's Electrical Estimating. I'm your co-host, Chris Trommer, and as always, I'm joined today by my other co-host, Sal Huerta. We have a great episode coming up for you folks. We are speaking with our friend Barney, and today it's going to be all about product pricing. Getting that pricing accurate to make sure it's going to be foolproof seems like it's something that should take precedent moving forwards on some of these jobs. What's your thoughts on that?
The pricing, when it comes to the estimating side, is very important because you can't use the list price, for an example, on a job because you would be way too high when it comes to the bid part. If you used your cost price, you would be obviously way too low, but more importantly, you wouldn't make any money on the job because you're basically giving away the products. So you have to find that balance in between that allows you to be competitive in your marketplace and yet be able to be profitable with the job itself. And that's where a service like NetPricer comes in for these customers, is that allows them to work directly with the distributor to get that estimate price for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I know that Barney, as we're going to hear shortly, mentions NetPricer and the pricing he gets from McCormick, his estimating software, and even reaching out on some of those high value pieces of product to his distributor directly, and then trying to figure out, what kind of percentage to sort of safeguard himself for when that actually goes live. Because as we've seen for a while there, prices were fluctuating daily in wild swings. So he, took a lot of these different steps to make sure that he's built enough into his pricing to adjust for these swings so he's not losing out on any profits, or even worse, having loss on the product side.
This is where the professional estimator comes in. Sometimes people think this is not a big deal. You just plug in some numbers or let the computer system do it for yourself and it'll run on its own. The reality is these guys are professionals and truly understand, like you said, market conditions. They understand labor forces in their area and all these different factors that allow them to put out a price that is comfortable for them in case there's fluctuations in between. Otherwise, like you said, they could lose the job because they're way out of bounds. But more importantly, they could win a job and then not make any money on it. And that'd be worse. So yeah, these guys know exactly what they're doing, and it takes a lot of work and skill to get to that level.
All right. Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into this interview with Barney and, get these people the insights that they're looking for. Barney, what was it, a year or two ago when copper was having those major fluctuations? I know Sal and me had talked about them because of the fact that we had to look into how NetPricer can provide faster pricing. I mean, everything was changing daily, sometimes hourly, in big swings. How do you, on a day-to-day basis, or when things like this sort of hit, handle the fluctuation in material costs? Factor that into your estimating strategy so it's not becoming an issue that you're constantly worrying about?
Well, I try to keep up on the flow of it. And at bid time, I update through NetPricer and I compare it to, I use McCormick estimating program. And I compare it to their pricing. That's for like the small wired stuff, but the large stuff in my bid, I call my suppliers, 2 or 3 different suppliers, and I find out what their pricing is today for that. Ask them what they think it's going to do in, let's say, 2 months from now if I get the job. So what I do, so that's as close as I can get at bid time. But then in my estimating program, I've got a percentage for overhead and a percentage for profit. And so I bring up on volatile items, I raise my profit level percentage so that if I get the job 2-3 months down the road, at least I'm covered if it goes up, because I'm not going to be able to change it. Then, of course, I go to the buyouts when we actually buy them, and I call all the suppliers again and buy it as low as I can.
So you're not only getting the pricing through NetPricer, which is coming from your distributor, and also using sort of the stock pricing from McCormick, but reaching out to your distributors as well and sort of drawing a picture using the 3 of those of what you can sort of expect, and then build that into sort of the profit percentage that you lay out for yourself.
Correct. I increase the profit a little bit just to cover myself so I don't lose money. Nobody wants to bid to lose money. And then, of course, you don't want to bid so
Exactly.
high that you're wasting your time because you're not going to get the job.
So how do you find that middle ground? Is it just experience losing some jobs in the past because you did go too high? Is it just take
Yeah,
time to find that sweet spot of how to know where to go with it?
yeah, all of that. I've been running my own company for 30 years. So I'm used to it in pretty much everything we just talked about.
Now, if there's somebody that's starting out, with estimating, any tips for them when they're trying to figure out where their percentage should be? Is there anything you take into mind when you're trying to say, hey, I need to bring this up 15% or 20%, or I can leave it where it is when you're trying to figure that out?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with how hungry are you? How much do you really need this job? And then you can adjust it in the ways that I've been talking about, which is NetPricer, my estimating program. I'm sure plenty estimating programs. Cover yourself a little bit. If you get that job, you don't want to lose money to get it while you're building it. Add a little fluff into it is, I guess, another way to say it.
Now, is this across all of the products that you're out there pricing, or is it for the high dollar amounts that you're looking at? Is it sort of that 80-20 rule where like you're looking at 20% of the most, expensive products for that project, that you're really looking at the very details of it to make sure that these are getting adjusted accordingly, and then the other 80 is looked at a different way?
Yeah, the other 80, I pretty much trust NetPricer for all the nuts and bolts, wire nuts, literally all the small things because there's thousands of different items in each assembly. I trust NetPricer for that because I don't have enough time to go and price out every EMT connector, strap, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. I guess 80-20 is a fair way to look at it.
If there's somebody's coming in to look at this, it's basically because you can have what, a couple thousand or more products on your price sheet at this point. So
Yeah,
you're really
thousands of them.
trying to figure out at that point what your 20% is, what's going to be your highest dollar value, and then take those steps of, hey, figure out what all the prices are, draw a consensus or an average based off of that, and then place it into your percentage, much you feel comfortable for it.
Yep. So I build a lot of stuff in assemblies. I'm sure the guys know what assemblies are. Each assembly has all the different parts in it. Let's say a surface mount receptacle has got your box, 10 feet of pipe, couplings, receptacle, raised industrial cover, ground screw, wire nuts, as an example. So when I extend it out, which means if I get all of my assemblies and I send it to the summary, then I can click a button and I could see all of the tons of parts, items.
Mm.
And what I do is I take time to look from the top down and then on the price column, if anything jumps out to me that looks expensive or is a lot of money, then I'll take the time to dig into that particular item and
Okay.
maybe make a call to a supplier and say, is this right? That way you could look through 1,000 items and maybe only 10 things that might jump out at you.
So you sort of set that bar of like anything over this sort of particular price point is something I'm going to have to reach out and look into a little bit more. But anything that's on this lower end of things, like you said, the nuts and the bolts, it's not going to be something that's going to break your back over time.
Yeah. Also, you don't have enough time to look over thousands of items on
Yeah.
every particular job. You'll bid one job in a year. So, yeah, just look at the money. And of course, it's all different with the large items, like large pipe, large wire.
Mhm.
I definitely call my suppliers or get quotes from them.
So that's going to
That
be
way, I'm
large
not,
if you're looking at large quantities.
yeah, if, like, let's say 500 copper, you're
Mhm.
going to call your suppliers, a couple of them, and find out what is the price today? What do you expect the price to be in 2-3 months? And then you got to
Gotcha.
roll the dice and take your chances.
Now, is that something? So you don't have any projection within your estimating software for sort of products to say, hey, this is what it could be projected at in two
Uh,
months based off of what we've seen over the last year or anything, right?
no, I do my footwork. I get on the phone. All my gear is going to be quoted. I'm going to get 2 or 3 quotes for my gear, 2 or 3 quotes for my lighting. That's pretty solid. Once they give you a quote, they may come back and say, this is only good for 30 days, something like that, because they know if the large items are going to fluctuate. And so they're going to cover themselves. So at that point, again, you might want to increase your profit level percentage to cover yourself.
Barney, inaccuracies and things like that happen all the time. And one of the things we hear a lot about, especially for estimators, is when you needed, you mentioned wire nuts earlier. You needed 10 wire nuts for on an assembly for a job. It comes in a box of 100. So if you put in 10, sometimes your estimating package thinks you're buying 10 boxes of 100. How do you balance that out, or any quantity breaks like that when it comes to estimating?
Let's say I've got 10 or 100 or 50, and they come in a box of 100. My program divides the cost of that, let's say, box in each individual one. McCormick, all those assemblies, that's what they will do. They'll this many screws, this many wire nuts, this many of that. And so they do all that work for me. Okay. Otherwise, it takes forever to go and get a box and divide it by how many's in that box, and then go and adjust thousands of items. You got to have a good estimating software that you trust. Not my advice is I wouldn't go out there and bid big jobs that did not trust, in my case, McCormick.